God never intended for prayer to become an escape hatch from responsibility. He never designed faith to replace action. And yet so many people kneel down and expect the skies to crack open while they sit in idleness.
You've heard of Think and Grow Rich, but have you lived it? Welcome to Napoleon Hill Daily Millionaire Mindset, where we break down timeless success secrets, one powerful idea a day. Miss a day, miss a breakthrough. Subscribe now. Your millionaire mind is waiting.
They are praying for change while refusing to change. They are asking for blessings they've not yet prepared to carry. They plead for rain while holding no cup. And this is the quiet tragedy of many believers. They keep asking God to do for them what He's been trying to do through them. Every prayer you've ever made is a mirror, a reflection of the person you're being shaped into. That's why real spiritual growth begins when you stop asking, "When will God answer me?" and start asking, "What must I become to carry the answer I seek?" That question shifts everything, because the truth is, God has already moved. The moment the desire was planted in your spirit, the path began unfolding. But it unfolds through you, not just in front of you. That's why prayer without transformation is like planting seeds and refusing to till the soil. It becomes empty ritual, motion without depth, and God does not respond to ritual. He responds to alignment. You are the vessel. You are the bridge between heaven and earth. And if your life is stuck, it's not because God hasn't heard you, it's because He's waiting for you to move in the direction of your own prayer, to speak differently, to walk differently, to think like someone who already holds what they're asking for, because only then will infinite intelligence begin shaping reality to match the vibration you now carry. God doesn't reward longing. He rewards embodiment. You don't attract what you beg for. You attract what you're willing to become. So if you've been praying and waiting and nothing seems to change, ask yourself this: have you become the version of you that can receive what you're asking for? Because until you do, the answer will remain in holding. Not because God is cruel, but because He knows if He gave it to you now, it would break you. And He loves you too much to let you hold something that still outweighs your character. This is the sacred mercy no one talks about. God doesn't deny you. He delays what would destroy you. And in that delay, He gives you the greatest invitation of all. Not to wait harder, but to rise higher. Not to pray louder, but to become clearer. Because every answered prayer demands a version of you that can carry it without cracking. This is not punishment, it is preparation. And the moment you stop seeing prayer as a rescue rope and begin seeing it as a call to transformation, that's when everything begins to shift. That's when the divine architecture starts aligning around your steps. You're not just here to ask, you're here to embody the answer. And when your spirit finally says, "I am ready to become what this blessing requires," all of heaven takes notice. You don't need a sign. You need alignment. You don't need to chase. You need to match. The blessing is already assigned to you, but so is the character required to hold it. And if you don't develop that character, the blessing will remain behind the veil. Not because God is withholding, but because He is waiting for you to become compatible with what you asked for. That's why nothing truly changes until you change. God will not deliver blessings to versions of you that were never meant to carry them. So if you want to see the supernatural, you must step into the natural obedience that prepares the way. This is the key. Heaven answers through transformation. Prayer is permission, but your becoming is what makes the delivery possible. Everything changes the moment you realize this. You're not just the one making the request. You're the one being shaped into the answer. You can cry all night, scream into your pillow, beg for a breakthrough, and still feel like nothing is moving. Why? Because God does not respond to emotion alone. He responds to identity. He listens to your heart, yes, but he moves according to the level of self you've chosen to walk in. You can beg like a victim and still receive nothing. But when you rise and speak like someone who knows who they are in God's eyes, everything begins to shift in the unseen. That's what most people miss. They pray as one person and expect to receive as another. They ask for peace while still carrying the identity of chaos. They ask for love while clinging to worthlessness. They ask for provision while living like someone who doubts it could ever happen. But prayer is not about saying the right words. It's about becoming the right frequency. That's the law of faith. And God, who is infinite intelligence, responds not to how loud you cry, but to how deeply you align. Because prayer is not performance. It's resonance. You don't convince God by suffering more. You attract his movement by becoming someone he can move through. That's what real faith does. It transforms your identity. It rewrites the way you see yourself. And until that shift happens, no amount of effort can replace the inner agreement that heaven is waiting on. God is not looking for desperation. He's looking for congruence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions agree with the future you're asking for, the heavens take notice. Not because you've earned it, but because now you can carry it. You've become a match for what you desire. So here's the challenge. The next time you pray, don't just ask. Examine who is doing the asking. Is it the old version of you who still believes in limitation and unworthiness? Or is it the new version of you that says, I was made for this. I am aligning with this. I am stepping into the frequency of what I've already received spiritually, and I will now become it physically. That's where the power is. That's when the doors begin to open. Because the most powerful prayers are not spoken. They are lived. They are written into your thoughts, your posture, your decisions, and your self-image. When God sees a person willing to rebuild their identity to match their request, he sends the answer, not because you were loud, but because you were aligned. It's easy to believe that God is taking his time, that heaven is holding back, that the answer is delayed by divine choice. But what if that delay isn't coming from above? What if it's coming from within? What if the gap between your prayer and its fulfillment has less to do with time and more to do with the version of you that still hasn't become a match for the thing you're asking for? People say God works in mysterious ways, but most of those mysteries dissolve when you realize the real process is this. God places the seed of desire in you, then waits for you to become the soil it can grow in. That's not punishment. That's partnership. Because if he handed you the blessing prematurely, it would wither in your hands. You wouldn't know how to handle it. You'd sabotage it. You'd leak it through old wounds, old doubts, old insecurities. So God waits, not to frustrate you, but to protect what's sacred. He waits for your character to rise, for your habits to harden, for your emotional state to become stable enough to hold the weight of what you've been begging for. And if you're not willing to grow into it, the prayer stays unanswered. Not because he said no, but because you said no to the growth required to carry it. This is where people lose their faith. They think the silence means rejection, but in reality it means construction. You're being built into the answer. And if you stop too soon, if you fall back into the old identity, the old vibration, the old emotional state, you delay yourself again. You push the blessing further away, not because God is cruel, but because he cannot violate your current self-image. That's the law. Spirit works through structure, and your inner structure must match the outer thing you're asking for. This is why embodiment matters. If you pray for peace but live in panic, your frequency blocks it. If you ask for love but embody lack, your life will only reflect what you believe you deserve. And no, you cannot fake it. Heaven is not fooled by performance. It is moved by vibration, the truth of who you are when no one's looking. So the question becomes, have I become the answer I'm waiting for? If the answer is no, then stop looking at the sky and start looking in the mirror. Because the more you embody it, the more life must reflect it. That's not hope, that's law. The spiritual realm is not distant, it's responsive, and it is waiting on you to become the version of yourself that already knows. This prayer is not on the way. It's within me, forming me, becoming me. Most people don't realize this, but they're resisting the very thing they're praying for. Not out of rebellion, but out of programming. They speak words of desire, yet carry emotional patterns that reject what they say they want. They pray for abundance, but still carry guilt around money. They ask for love, but subconsciously fear being seen. They cry out for peace while maintaining habits that stir anxiety. So the contradiction remains. And heaven cannot override contradiction because God, as infinite intelligence, responds to the core frequency of your being, not just your words. And if you carry inner resistance, your vibration sends out a different request than your lips ever will. The subconscious becomes the architect of your reality, while your conscious mind remains confused, wondering why nothing's happening. It's because you're pushing away what you're asking for while pretending to pull it in. And this is the moment of truth. You cannot manifest what you still fear. You cannot receive what you still feel unworthy of. You cannot become what you still believe is unsafe. That's why transformation must begin with awareness. Until you face the emotional resistance hiding in your heart, your prayer stays locked. And it's not punishment, it's physics. Spirit does not override your energy, it flows through your permission. Ask yourself, what would happen if the very thing you're praying for arrived today? Not in fantasy, but in physical form. Would you feel peace or panic? Would you feel ready or would you sabotage it? If you're honest, the answer will show you where the inner resistance lives. And that's where your real work begins. Because until your spirit is in agreement, nothing you ask for can rest in your life. It may appear briefly, but it won't stay. And God doesn't want to give you something fleeting. He wants to give you something eternal. So release the resistance. Rewrite the story. Begin to tell your subconscious, I am safe to receive. I am worthy of abundance. I am ready to be seen. I am willing to be loved. When those affirmations take root, not just in language, but in vibration, you become a new vessel. You're no longer asking from a place of lack. You're becoming from a place of overflow. And the moment you reach that place, God begins to move, not just for you, but through you. Because the greatest prayer you'll ever pray is the one your whole being agrees with. No resistance, no fear, just surrender, just readiness, just alignment. There's a signal that heaven waits for, not a sound, not a word, but a vibration that says, I'm ready. It doesn't come from your mouth, it comes from the center of your being. It's the moment your doubt turns into conviction, when your desperation is replaced by decision. And from that moment forward, life begins to bend toward you differently. Not because you begged longer, but because your inner world finally stabilized enough for God to flow through you with clarity. You see, God never stopped listening. What he's been waiting on is your alignment with the answer. That alignment isn't about performance. It's about readiness. You can only receive what you have made room for. And most people haven't made room. Their spirit is still cluttered with old narratives, unresolved fears, and emotional conditions that choke the very thing they're calling in. They pray for a new life while holding tightly to everything that keeps them the same. That's why spiritual progress often begins with release. When you let go of what no longer fits the future you desire, you send a signal, a clean one, A signal that says, I'm no longer arguing with the blessing. I'm preparing space for it. And that preparation is sacred. It's not passive. It's not sitting still waiting on a miracle. It's becoming the kind of person who could wake up tomorrow, receive exactly what they asked for, and remain steady, worthy, and unshaken in its presence. So ask yourself, would your current routine survive your next blessing? Would your current mindset hold up under the weight of the thing you say you're waiting for? If not, don't wait for the blessing. Build the structure that could carry it. That's the signal. When your life, your habits, and your mindset say, I'm already walking with what I've asked for, the spiritual realm responds accordingly. God works through laws, not chaos, through flow, not force. And when you finally stop wrestling with timing, worthiness, or fear, you step into that flow. Things begin to move faster. People appear. Ideas return. Strength rises. Not because the world changed, but because you finally synchronized with what was always trying to reach you. And here's the truth most never hear in church. God doesn't move when you shout. He moves when you resonate. When your inner life reflects what your lips have declared, he shows up, not with delay, not with resistance, but with speed and certainty. Because when the signal is pure, the delivery is guaranteed. Most people approach prayer as if it were a request form, submitting their needs and waiting for divine approval. But real prayer, the kind that shifts atmospheres and rewires lives, is not passive. It is a transfer of power from the unseen into the seen, from divine mind into your human vessel. When you pray with understanding, you are not just speaking into the void. You are receiving instructions, upgrading your identity, becoming infused with the vibration of what's to come. But the transfer cannot complete if your system is not ready. Think of it like this. You can't run powerful electricity through a weak wire. It would melt. In the same way, God won't pour the full charge of your prayer into a vessel that's still unstable, unsure, or distracted. That's why some of the most important moments in your spiritual life don't feel like fire. They feel like refinement. God is strengthening the wire, stretching the capacity, preparing you not just to receive power, but to hold it without burning out. This is why your life sometimes feels like pressure. It's not random suffering. It's divine calibration. You're being built to hold the answer you've been declaring. And when you finally become strong enough, still enough, aligned enough, the energy moves. Ideas come with speed. Resources arrive with ease. The vision gets clearer, the way opens wider, and the next steps become undeniable, not because of luck, but because you've stepped into the flow of delivery. So stop praying like you're placing an order. Start praying like you're plugging into the current of infinite intelligence. Say, God, make me a channel. Make me the match. Make me the vessel. Because when your prayer becomes an invitation for transformation, you are no longer waiting for a miracle. You are becoming the miracle in motion. Understand this deeply. The most powerful outcomes do not fall into your life fully formed. They are channeled into your spirit long before they appear in your hands. But that transfer is not just information. It's empowerment. When it finishes its work inside you, the outer world must adjust to the new power you carry. And that is the secret too many forget. Prayer doesn't change God, it changes you. And when you change, everything else follows. You would be shocked to know how many prayers were already on their way. already assigned, already written into the divine flow of things, but got interrupted because the person asking couldn't hold the frequency long enough, not because they were evil, not because they didn't want it, but because they stepped out of alignment before the answer had time to mature. They asked, then waited, then got anxious, they believed, then overthought, they moved in faith, then reversed course in fear. And like a plant pulled from the ground before it takes root, the miracle never had a chance to stabilize. This is one of the most dangerous habits in the spiritual life, asking for something and then digging it up with your own doubt. The moment the delay feels longer than expected, the ego comes in. It demands evidence. It wants quick proof. And if it doesn't see it, it labels the process a failure. It didn't work. God must be punishing me. Maybe I wasn't good enough. But that's not spiritual insight. That's impatience dressed in fear. And the law of creation doesn't answer impatience. It answers persistence, stillness, certainty, embodiment. God doesn't stop working when you get tired. You stop seeing when you stop believing. And most people forget, faith is not just a spark at the beginning of the prayer. It is the fire that must continue burning through the silence, through the waiting, through the ordinary days where nothing seems to be moving. Because something is moving, but not everything moves on your schedule, some answers are so sacred, so powerful, so transformational, that heaven takes its time building the structure inside you before the form can arrive outside of you. You interrupt the process when you begin questioning the very promise you just asked for. That creates vibration drift. You shift from it's done to maybe not, from I believe to I'm not sure anymore. And every time you shift, you force the delivery system to restart alignment. You're not punished, you're reset. The package doesn't disappear, but the signal becomes scrambled. And God will not deliver what your soul no longer seems willing to carry. This is why consistency in spirit is one of the rarest and most powerful states to maintain. When you pray with clarity and keep walking with congruence, when your vibration stays steady, even in the absence of proof, you override delay with embodiment. You become the kind of person that God can trust with delivery because he knows you won't drop it halfway. You've made room. You've made space. You've held the frequency long enough for heaven to match it. So stop interrupting what's trying to complete. Stop doubting what you've already declared. Stay in the vibration of already done. Stay in the identity of already aligned. The moment you stop restarting the process, the answer finds its way home. There is a dialogue happening inside of you at all times. A conversation between what you've been conditioned to believe and what your spirit knows is true. And until that conversation shifts, the external world cannot follow. People don't realize it. But the subconscious mind is always whispering instructions to the body, to your energy, to the world around you. And that whisper becomes your reality. Not because life is cruel, but because life is obedient to the dominant vibration you carry. So if deep inside you're still saying, I don't deserve this, or it's too late, or it probably won't happen for me, then no matter how many times you speak faith aloud, your results will still reflect what your inner conversation believes. That's not negative thinking, that's spiritual misalignment. And God, who speaks in vibration more than language, responds to the real voice inside you, the one you don't say out loud. This is why transformation doesn't start with louder prayers. It starts with cleaner self-talk. When your internal dialogue shifts from fear to faith, from self-rejection to self-permission, everything else begins to reorient around it. The world begins treating you the way you treat yourself in your own thoughts. The people you meet will mirror the vibration you carry. The doors that open will match the level of clarity you've developed about who you are and what you're here to carry. That's what no one teaches you about prayer. It's not just about asking. It's about agreeing with the version of yourself that can receive it. If you ask for healing, but keep identifying as someone broken, you block the flow. If you ask for love but still speak to yourself with hatred, you contradict the very thing you're asking for. And the spiritual law says this clearly. You can only receive what you have internally normalized. So start here. Change the conversation. In the morning, before anyone else speaks into your life, speak into your own. Say, I'm aligned with what I've asked for. Say, I am becoming the vessel for what is already mine. Speak it not to convince God. He's already convinced. Speak it to reprogram your spirit into agreement with the blessing already on its way. Because once your subconscious stops rejecting what your conscious mind desires, miracles can finally land. The truth is, heaven is not waiting for a louder voice. It's waiting for a unified one that doesn't collapse into doubt when things get quiet, one that doesn't revert to shame the moment things get slow. When your inner conversation becomes a match for the prayer you sent out, reality has no choice. The vibration you walk in becomes the future you live in. That's not just prayer. That's power. The modern seeker is often paralyzed by indecision, not for lack of desire, but because he's forever waiting for a confirmation, waiting for a sign in the sky, waiting for permission from the world to proceed. And all the while, he forgets the most critical truth of spiritual law. The most powerful signs are not shown to you. They are born through you. You were never meant to wait indefinitely. Faith was never meant to be idle. Infinite intelligence does not reward the man who hesitates at the edge of the mountain, but the one who climbs without knowing exactly where his foot will land next. You see, waiting for a sign before taking a step is the hallmark of doubt disguised as spirituality. And God, being the source of all life, does not stoke confusion. He speaks best to the man already in motion. The moment you start to walk in alignment with what you've prayed for, you become the proof. Your life becomes the signal. Your change in attitude, your refusal to return to the old version of yourself, your quiet certainty, even in uncertainty, that is the sign. But most people want to become confident before moving. They wait for the world to give them the feeling they are meant to give themselves, and that waiting delays everything. Faith without works is dead, and too many die spiritually while still breathing because they buried their belief under analysis, hesitation, and endless waiting for something outside of them to validate what they already know within. But here's the higher law. When you act like your prayer has already been answered, you collapse the distance between you and the result. There's no secret path. There's only alignment. And alignment is not about perfection. It's about congruence. It's when your intention, your emotion, and your decision all point in the same direction. That's when the signs come. Not because you begged for them, but because you became one. The universe begins rearranging itself not just around your request, but around your embodiment. Ask yourself now, would the version of me that already received this blessing be sitting still, hesitating, doubting? Or would he be stepping forward, calm and decisive, trusting that whatever doesn't exist yet will be built beneath his feet? If you can answer that question honestly and act on it, you become magnetic. You begin pulling into your experience exactly what belongs to your vibration. God does not withhold. The law does not punish, but both require movement. The one who sits in fear will see only obstacles. The one who stands up in faith will begin to notice openings. This is not superstition. It is spiritual physics. Your movement gives the divine something to bless. Your choice becomes the container for the answer. Your boldness reveals your belief more clearly than your words ever will. So stop looking for signs and become one. Let your courage be a message to the heavens that you are ready. Let your persistence signal that you will not abandon what you have prayed for. And in doing so, you stop asking whether the answer is coming, because your life becomes the undeniable evidence that it's already here. There comes a point in every spiritual journey when the asking must stop and the becoming must begin, not because God has not heard you, but because he has. Not because you're being ignored, but because the answer has already been released, and now it's your task to rise into it. The truth is, most people pray for change, but keep walking in the same posture, the same rhythm, the same emotional climate that created the problem to begin with. They declare a new future with their words, but betray it with their behavior. But the one who really believes, he walks differently. He speaks differently. He prepares the room before the guest arrives. He shows up with the energy of someone who already knows his request has been fulfilled in the unseen and is simply waiting for the manifestation to catch up. That's not delusion, that's alignment. And alignment is what pulls unseen forces into visible reality. Understand this, faith without embodiment is just noise. You don't get what you ask for with your mouth. You get what you prepare for with your habits. Your daily life is a declaration. Every time you organize your time, sharpen your mind, steward your space, or cultivate peace in the midst of chaos, you are communicating something far more powerful than words ever could. I am already one with the answer. And heaven listens to that language. This is where most fall short. They pray, then wait to feel different before they act different. But the spiritual law works in reverse. You act in faith, and the feeling follows. The movement creates the momentum. The posture of belief generates the reality of belief. That is why some doors only open after you've already begun to walk toward them. Not because they were locked, but because you hadn't yet proven you were ready to pass through. When your steps begin to match your declarations, the world must shift. You attract the resources, the people, the ideas, not by chasing them, but by becoming the kind of person they naturally gravitate toward. That's the hidden mechanism behind answered prayer. It is not external, it is transformational. When you change, the current of life adjusts to accommodate the new version of you. So today, stop circling the same mountain. Stop praying for what you're not yet willing to carry. Instead, build the habits of the one who already has it. Speak like it's done. Move like it's done. Organize your space like it's coming. Treat your work as sacred ground, because it is. You're not waiting on God. He's waiting on you to walk like you've already received. And when you walk like that, the delay ends, because you're no longer requesting, you're receiving. You're no longer wondering, you're embodying. And life, in its wisdom, can now match what you finally dared to become.
Thank you for watching Napoleon Hill Daily Millionaire Mindset. If this sparks something in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe now and turn these timeless ideas into your daily advantage. Drop a comment below. Let us know your biggest takeaway. And remember, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you believe and work for. Think big, grow daily, live rich. See you in the next video.